Hello and welcome inside a sectional preview edition of the Scores Table. My name is Brian Haenchen, joined by Courtney, Delks, Danny Riego. We have a big show planned for everybody tonight. Jim Gordillo, Austin Hough, Kyle Sokeland, all set to join us. We're going to cover all corners of the state tonight with this show. We've been plotting and planning this for about a week now, probably a little bit longer, honestly, with the text between the three of us. So we're ready to go. I'm going to jump right in because we're going to do our darndest to keep this thing under an hour. Let's go ahead, ladies and gentlemen, and let's start with Sectional 8, Noblesville. Fishers, Hamilton, Southeastern, Carmel, Noblesville. Danny, I'll let you start the conversation, but I know that we'd like to talk a little bit of Fishers and Carmel.
Yeah, I think Carmel-Noblesville is the first round game that I would settle in on. And the reason why I settle in on that is because Noblesville last year lost to Carmel in their building. And it was like the first time there where we just saw all of the pieces of Carmel fit together. And so they have a lot of experience playing against the 1-3-1. I think they're experienced with the junk. Mackenzie Woods, too. I mean, I can say this now because she's in the rotation at Iowa State, but like Reagan did nothing in that game last year. So Mackenzie Woods has some, big game DNA that she can apply in this section. I think that's a difficult first round matchup. If Noblesville gets caught looking ahead, it could be closer to what they want it to be. But when you have senior laden teams, like I mentioned, Mackenzie Woods, there's another senior by the name of Mallory Borquine. And as I watch Carmel this year, I've gotten to like her game more and more. She's just relentless at attacking the goal. She plays extremely hard. She shoots the 10-foot pull-up jumper as good as anybody in the county. But, they want to do it for Izzy Shepard, this senior class, and I'll throw Lauren Perry in there also. But Mackenzie Woods she's going to be the kid to kind of focus in on. I mean, she's fun to watch. I think that she has a lot of similarities to TJ McConnell. So, those are my thoughts on Carmel.
I think with Carmel, too, Danny mentioned a lot of their seniors, but they're freshmen. For any of you guys who saw that Cathedral game, Maddie Wallace is a freshman who's starting in Izzy Shepard's place for her injury, but she hit 2 back-to-back threes late in that game. And then Bella Ramsey, another freshman, had a left-handed layup to put them up by 4 within the last minute. And just those 2 kids, 2 freshmen, we talked on the preview show last, that it's going to be a lot of freshmen in these sectionals and regionals that are kind of going to have some coming out parties. And it's going to be really fun to watch Maddie Wallace and Bella Ramsey and see what they do for Carmel.
Carmel, too, they're going to have a chance here to finish the season 500. They have Ben Davis coming up on Friday as we record this, so it'll be the night of this episode. But Danny, you and I were talking before the show, just kind of, I was pondering aloud, how has Carmel managed to hang with teams like Homestead, like Pike, HSE a few weeks ago. That one's kind of easy for it. South Bend, Washington, who we'll talk about here in a bit with Austin. Just how do they do it? And you pointed out seniors, and that counts for so much this time of year. And we've seen it in action with Carmel. So that game against Noblesville, between them and HSE, Noblesville certainly got the more difficult draw with them, and then Westfield, a team that just grinds teams into the mud and is more than happy to win a game 30-29 if that's what it takes, with those 2 teams to go through to the championship game.
Hank, that's a really good point. Not only were those games close against those really quality opponents, but they led most of them, even into the second half. And so, you catch them and they, Maddie Wallace, for example, hits back-to-back threes in the sectional game. Suddenly, it's, they win one of those basketball games. I think going into it, I think I would have tiered, and I think everybody would have tiered HSC and Noblesville a notch above the rest of the sectional. But the team that I would have wanted to avoid is Carmel for all of the reasons that we're talking about. There's just a lot of uncertainty. They've been in every game. Again, I just saw what Mackenzie Woods did to Reagan Wilson last year in their building. I just know that they're capable of doing something in one game, and that's a very difficult matchup. Noblesville better be careful.
Speaking of Noblesville, as we record this, literal seconds before we went on the air, we found out about one of the crazier endings to the season, a technical foul on the Noblesville bench. They're playing Pendleton Heights. Technical foul on the Noblesville bench in the final seconds. Casey Warfel goes out, hits one of 2 free throws. Pendleton Heights, Meredith Tipner can't get a shot off. Pendleton Heights wins. So it's been a weird season, and I think that we have ourselves a nice little precursor to the tournament with a last-second technical foul on the bench.
I've got to see it.
A few seconds left. I'm fascinated to see that video. While we're on Pendleton Heights, we should congratulate Casey Warfel. 2,000 career points for her as she looks to close out her career with a sectional championship, something that Pendleton Heights hasn't done in a very long time. But I don't know if I've mentioned it on air before, but it's crazy covering this kid. The first time that I saw her, it was against Fishers, and their coach was out, and a bunch of other players are all out with like COVID and close contacts and all that. And there's this little freshman who goes out and sparks a massive upset of Fishers, during her freshman season. So that was really cool to see. And it's cool and not at all surprising to see the heights that she's herself has reached and all the wins that she's piled up at Pendleton Heights.
Yeah, I think it's going to extend too. I mean, they're the favorite to win their sectional. If we see her in the regional, she's just a lot of fun to watch. So I agree. I echo those thoughts.
Other game that we wanted to talk about, obviously, from Sectional 8 is Fishers HSE, a rematch of the Mudsock game. We talk a lot about Riley Shellhammer, talk a lot about Allison Choi, talk a lot about Nevaeh Dickman. Fishers the other night, they take Lawrence North to overtime, a game that they too led up until late when LN found a way to come back and force extra time. But Fishers is the same type of team where they can beat you up defensively. You can never really count out a Lauren Votaw team, and they've got some pieces there that could give HSE some problems in a rivalry game.
Yeah, and they got a big moment from Allison Choi. I know that I think the game ended in overtime, not in their favor, but I think she hit a bank three to send the Lawrence North game to overtime. So now there's some recent history and some recent experience to draw back on. That look, anytime you have these seniors that have been there, I mean, Allison Choi and Nevaeh Dickman they're not just seniors. I mean, they're seniors that have been a part of basketball teams that have been through deep runs in Sectional 8. So those experiences are also very scary. We criticized is the wrong word, but we pointed out, how Carmel was leading those basketball games and not winning them. Troy and Dickman have experience in winning these games. So if HSE messes around and that game's close going into the fourth quarter, and then, senioritis kicks in and, like I said, you get a bank three, things are crazy in the tournament like that. And so I do think that Fishers is a tough out for HSE.
And it's so seldom that those games are blowouts one way or the other, at least in my experience with the Mudsock. Every year it's a dogfight. So you never know quite what to expect with those teams. And with a team like Fishers, you mentioned Nevaeh Dickman, Allison Choi, they paid their dues with that state championship team. Then you saw them come into their own last year when given the opportunity. They shined and played great. Now you add in a Shellhammer to that mix, and that's a talented team that, like we said, can make some noise and rock the boat a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. You were getting.
Oh no, you're fine. I was getting. If you got something else to add, go for it. I was pausing for a fact.
I was just going to ask you two guys that if
sure.
Because it's Saturday. Listen, Saturday night is. We've been talking about that Saturday night game between Noblesville and HSE forever and ever. But we also know that Sectional 8 is a difficult bracket to navigate through, when we might not get it. Which do you think is the better opportunity for an upset?
Court, why don't you guess first?
Man, you put me on the spot. I will say that as I was sitting here listening, those first round games, like when you're a senior, and it's first round of sectional and you lose, the emotions and the nervousness of a first round sectional game for every senior in the state is real, because you might be your last game. It might not be. It's just this weird feeling. No matter, I don't care if you're the number one team playing the worst team in the state, you're still going to have those feelings. So based off of that, I'm probably going to go with Carmel upsetting Noblesville.
That's what I was going to go with too, just because it feels like Carmel's kind of almost due to an extent. They've been knocking on that door for a while. It one feels tricky, man. It's weird. That one bothers me. The Westfield Noblesville game bothers me too. I think HSE Zions will in the semifinal. If that's what ends up happening, I think it'll be a little bit closer, because it's going to be nearly impossible, theoretically, for HSE to duplicate 20 for 24 from three, or 16 for 25 from three, whatever number it was from three. But yeah, I would go with Carmel over Noblesville, I think, just because senior leadership, senior experience, and all that. And they've just come so close. But Danny, we talked about how in the draw, it felt like it had been a while, or we'd gotten really lucky with the draw and everything lining up perfectly. Well, it's also been a while since we've had an upset or something weird happen in that section. I don't think that's happened since I've been here. It's always gone chalk, and we've gotten the matchups kind of that we wanted or expected to see. So I don't know. Maybe this is the year that Peter's robbed to pay Paul.
Yeah, I think it's good that, we got an opportunity to talk about Carmel and Fishers. I mean, if their seasons are abbreviated after Tuesday night, at least we got to talk about them. We can look forward to that Saturday matchup. But Sectional 8 is, you're right. I mean, I don't think anybody would be surprised with anything that happened there.
No. Let's move over to the Ben Davis sectional. I believe that is sectional 11, whatever number it is.
I miscalled it last time. I think it's 11. I called it 10 last episode.
Oh, that's right. I was listening to that as I was writing some previews today, and I had to triple check myself. Section 11. Let's start with Brownsburg-Pike. We've kind of broken it down, so we'll go relatively quickly through this, but seems kind of simple to me. It's going to depend on how the game's officiated because Pike likes to play physical. It's going to depend on Brownsburg's ability to handle Pike's pressure and to avoid some of those turnovers. I think they almost had 30 the first time they played, which allowed Pike to hang around in that game. And then for Pike, it's going to be as simple as just avoiding turnovers on their end because every time Brownsburg would make an oopsie, Brownsburg would make 2 to 3 oopsies, and suddenly Brownsburg's back in control, and they had to start the process all over again.
There will be a ton of eyeballs on that game because it's a Tuesday night and it's a matchup of two, whatever they are, top 10 teams. So I'll give you something to watch on either side. From Pike's perspective, Brownsburg runs a really wide zone. And when the zone is wide, and Courtney, you'll follow this, you can get the bottom zone defender to extend out a little bit. And if you fill the corner, that is going to pull Avery Gordon out. Fisher's got a ton of corner threes, and Pike in the match in the previous matchup got a ton of quarter threes. So watch Pike's ability to pull Avery out by throwing to the corner against their zone and see if they can hit corner threes. From Brownsburg's perspective, it's more of just, a mutual admiration, I think, with Josh. Like the deconstructed version of Brownsburg has two really good pieces. It has Avery Gordon and it has El McCullough. But watch how Josh, he makes them complementary. I mean, I think it's good coaching is getting two pieces to be complementary. Like in some of his box overload against man, he puts McCullough in the corner, which makes double down impossible. That's how McCullough gets a ton of her threes. She's shooting over 40% from three, but that's a player positioning thing. He also sets a lot of double stagger for McCullough. He runs things for his shooters. Sounds overly simplistic, but he does. But Gordon is always the second person in the double stagger because you can't hedge off of hers. It's the least athletic defender. So just a couple of kind of X and O coaching things as you're watching that basketball game. I think it could go either way. Hank pointed out all of the things that I think are absolutely true, and they're all really good points. But just from a coach's perspective and a basketball fan perspective, I wanted to give you guys something to watch in that game.
Court, did you ever a matchup like that where you're playing against a post of Gordon size? I'm sure you did, I guess, probably with some of those Ben Davis teams, right?
A few. We mainly was people that were playing us. We had a 6'4" center. It was
So I'll spin it then. How did you guys try to utilize her, and how did you find balance in that regard?
We ran a lot of weak side screening. I mean, lob passes to the weak side, get the defense moving. She was athletic, so we would just get people, also get her on screen and slips or screen and roll. I mean, just simple basketball. If you're able to execute the simplicity, it's beautiful basketball.
Winner of that game is going to play Plainfield. We'll have a chance to break down that matchup with whoever wins on Monday night, also at some point before Friday. Again, we're going to do live shows throughout next week, breaking down games, previewing games. Similar thing is, Danny, did you have more that you wanted to add on that Ben Davis sectional, the Brownsburg-Pike matchup?
No. I mean, I'm good.
Okay. Same too with Lawrence North sectional. You have Warren Central, North Central. Difficulty there is they're going to play each other head to head here in tonight, actually, as you're listening to this. So that makes it a little more difficult to preview, but I got a lot of written stuff on them. So let's go ahead and keep moving south, and let's actually go down to Franklin Central. We have Franklin Central Center Grove, the matchup that everybody wanted, but nobody wanted when it is. It's on a Tuesday night, the first game Tuesday night. Winner plays Southport there. The other one is Perry Meridian Mooresville. Let's go ahead and start with Franklin Central Center Grove, and there's hope that Lily Graves is going to play. So let's enter this. I'm going to enter this at least with the assumption that she plays, which is a big deal, obviously, for Franklin Central, just some experience, a real calming presence. I'm curious to see if Franklin Central can finally break through for that big signature win. It's been right there for this season, be it Lawrence Central, Noblesville, countless examples this season. But another opportunity here with Center Grove and a team that's looked really good down the stretch.
Yeah, the Center Grove played a really good game against the number one team in the state in their place. They just, I mean, I think we talked about it, the last episode. Stidham she went bananas in the third quarter. I think she hit 3 threes or something in the third quarter. Holman, she doesn't miss threes anymore. I think she made one in that quarter. Makaluski. I guess what I'm trying to say is like HSC makes you pay for their mistakes. Center Grove doesn't make a ton of them, but for me, the storyline in this basketball game is, can Franklin Central make Center Grove pay for their mistakes? Can they score enough? That's going to be the big thing. That's a lot to ask Baker. That's a lot to ask Quatari. That's a lot to ask Duvall. Kids that sure, they were all around last year, but it's a different feeling when you're looking at the same eye level as a power like Center Grove. So I think a lot comes down to the offensive production of Franklin Central pieces. I mean, and it'll be a collective effort. I mean, I mentioned Stidham, Holman, and Makaluski, and that even Van Heusen hit a second half 3 there. So it's going to take a collective effort to make them pay for it. But Center Grove, we talked a little bit about them on the offensive side, but it always comes back to their ability to defend. And I'll close with this. I heard Stuckmeyer at the Lawrence North game yell to his kids, but I think on a free throw, let's get him to a boring possession. Okay. And so let's just that is such a telling statement. Like, he's from Plymouth. I mean, Plymouth boys basketball is kind of known for that boring basketball is winning basketball kind of concept. I mean, he's kind of brought that. I mean, don't quote me when Danny says Center Grove is boring. Center Grove wins. I mean, if boring basketball is winning, I know, right? But I think that was such a unique statement, because I think if this game is extremely boring, Center Grove's going to win by double digits, because that's just who they are. They just can muck a game up, and they can make you work on the offensive side. They make you, reverse the ball 3, 4, 5 times before you're going to get a look. So again, I bring it to the Franklin Central offense as the key to the game.
I'm really curious for a kid like Peyton Duvall, who figures to have something of a matchup advantage inside against Emerson Vulcan for Center Grove. Maybe I would think on paper that you have that, and she's kind of a little bit of a safety valve for them. I'm curious to see how much Franklin Central is able to take advantage of there. Saw what Avery Gordon did. I'm not comparing the two, but similar situations. Avery Gordon at Brownsburg shredded Center Grove inside. Is that something Franklin Central looks to exploit? And I mean, they have the guards too. They could potentially avoid some of those boring possessions and speed a game up. I'm not sure if that's what they'll look to do, but it's an option there. And then on the other side, going back to the theme of seniors and winning DNA, I mean, you can't get much better than Lily Bischoff and Ava Grant. I mean, two kids who've been there before as recently as last year. And the concern or the injury coming into the season was just how leadership and this team's identity would develop over the course of a season. And we've seen it. And we've seen those two in particular, alongside Grace and Gilliard, really step up and take the mantle of leading this team. Danny talked about with some specific anecdotes with Lily Bischoff. Ava Grant really came into her own last year, and now this year has parlayed that into a really great senior season. So the pieces are really all there for Center Grove. So we'll see. That game feels really too close to call, and I know the computer's having it like a 50-50 split too in terms of the percentages.
Yeah, I think if our analysis was correct the first time we broke down the offensive side for Center Grove, Ava Grant's ability to make shots is going to be absolutely critical in this game. So she's going to have to make shots, but she always seems to, as long as Stuck continues to run stuff for her. You brought up Duvall's name. I think it's really interesting. I don't think Gilliard has to be the best player on the floor for Center Grove to win, but I do think that somebody on Franklin Central has to be the best player on the floor, like definitively, like after the fact, watching the game, be like, hey, this kid she just had the night of her life. And I think Duvall is the kid that has the potential to put up like a 15 and 15 kind of night. That kid's really talented and going to be really good. Yeah. And so I think that's the kid that I kind of point to see if she can have a great night. What night is that of the week? Is that Tuesday or is that a Saturday? That's a Tuesday? Oh, Hank.
Tuesday, right out of the gates.
You're so mad. You mentioned that earlier. Sorry, I missed that.
Livid. Yeah, it's a damn bad ping pong balls. I will scold them. The other matchup, I at least like to mention, I did my digging on Perry Meridian and Mooresville. pretty good draw for them. They avoid them and they avoid Southport, a team that's kind of scary there on the, that would be scary. I mean, they went from 2 wins to 10 wins in the blink of an eye, which is remarkable and a testament to what that team's done. We mentioned them a little bit on the draw show, but the Pios have the best record among those 3 teams at the bottom. They have a couple seniors in Randy Geringer, Ava Schaefer at the forefront. That's a dependable post and a dependable guard that they can work through. Mark Hurt's just such a great coach. It's difficult to count them out. And they beat Decatur Central in the regular season, but it was a closer game than one might have expected. So keep an eye on that one. Perry Meridian, the record isn't great, but they've been in a lot of close games this year against teams like Decatur Central, Park Tudor, Lowell, Whiteland. Those are all single-digit losses. So there's some pieces there with Mariah Thomas at Decatur Central, but a bit of a rebuild, or at Perry Meridian, a bit of a rebuild year for them. Same thing at Decatur Central, but they do have some young kids who are really stepping up. Havana Thompson, the sophomore, for instance, is 10 points, 3 assists, and 3 steals. Let's keep this thing moving. We're going to go ahead and jump down to Cathedral, the Cathedral sectional, another matchup that maybe want to scream into the void. Chatard Cathedral. I will start the discussion with this. Olivia Berzai was not available against Tri-West the other night. Chatard lost that game. They shot like 30-something%. Tri-West shot 50-something%. So a tough loss for them. Good news potentially on Berzai is that they're hopeful that she'll be available Friday or Tuesday night. So that would be big news for Chatard if they're able to get her back, because the lineup just looks so much more well-rounded, so much better put together with her in there. But even without her, I mean, there's still a lot of talented pieces there. Danny, I'll let you take us here.
Yeah, Lisa never said anything to me about this, but I can guarantee you she loves the draw. Like, particularly with the Berzai, uncertainty. I mean, I'm sure she'll play, but now there's uncertainty there. You beat them previously for the city championship. You get the game in your building. You get it on the first night, so now you can focus all of your attention on film study and adjustment from the last basketball game. Like, the draw is perfect for who I would deem as a slight underdog in the game. I think all of the stars have kind of aligned, but can they make enough shots? Like, it's just, I think I just said this about the other 3 sectionals. I mean, but it is kind of a shot making story in the postseason. You just never know what's going to happen. But like Jada Wilson in that first matchup hit back-to-back threes. She hit another 3 in this basketball game against Carmel, I think late to kind of win it. So Cathedral, this is their opportunity. And another reason why I think this is a great draw, and I would lump Chatard into this as well, is whoever wins that basketball game, I think, can springboard them a little bit kind of through the rest of the event. They have Addicts next, which won't be a bye because of the talent that they have on the floor. And then Purdue Poly is sitting there waiting too. But I think that a win against Chatard or a win against Cathedral for either of those basketball teams can kind of springboard them through there. So this is my thought on mainly a Cathedral take.
Yeah, Abby Beasley too is a kind of an unsung hero kid. She's one that I wrote about a little bit in the preview. Their point guard, she's really good, a steadying force. For Chatard, it'll be interesting if Berzai is unable to go, how other players around Anna Caskey are able to step up, because the plan will be and it might be the plan even if Berzai does play, but it'll be, let's pack the lane, deny them as many looks inside as we can and see if Betsy Traxler, Megan Todd, Alex Kendall can beat us. And I mean, they're capable of it. It's just a matter of applying those lessons when the opportunity comes.
And also Berzai. I mean, Berzai is so good at attacking the goal that you want to make her shoot from the outside, but she certainly is of her 3-level scoring, certainly better downhill and attacking when she gets 2 feet in the paint. So that's not exclusive to just other 3 players. And also Caskey is that good. Like, Caskey's, I mean, she's going to be the center of attention in every basketball game they play in the postseason because she can be absolutely dominant.
Yeah, that was just in my hypothetical situation if Berzai is unable to go. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Berzai is for sure a game-changing presence for sure. Let's go ahead and bring on our first guest. We have Jim Gordillo from down Bloomington Way here with us to talk a little bit of Bloomington basketball. Jim, how are you, buddy?
Yeah, pretty good.
Good. This is the first time. I think we DM'd multiple times about photos, story coverage, and that, but I don't ever think we've actually seen or talked on voice. So it's great to hear your voice, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Danny, I'll let you start the conversation because you've had a chance to screen Bloomington South, which, I mean, God, the way the draw sets up is probably a semi-state team as we sit here now.
Yeah, the computers love them, Jim. I mean, according to the computers, they have a 91% chance to win the sectional. They have a 77% chance to win the regional. I mean, that's higher than Lawrence Central's 69%. I mean, they are the most overwhelming favorite to get to the third weekend. So just talk about Bloomington South as an overview. They've only lost 2 games, but let our Indianapolis audience kind of just know who they are at a real top level before we dive deep into it.
Yeah, it's a team that's still got plenty of upside. There's not a senior in the entire roster. At the same time, this is a junior-led group. Julia Lashley, is their go-to player, but they've just got all these parts and pieces, and several of them. Violet Hall, I wrote about a couple of years. They've been starting since they were freshmen, so they really had to go through the growing pains 2 years ago, and you could see them get a little better last year, and now they've the team is theirs. That senior class graduated last year, and so basically everything's been turned over to them, and so they've done a really great job. This season they got balance. They got kids that can handle the ball. They got kids that can shoot. They got kids that can take the ball to the basket. They got a freshman guard and her sister, a junior who comes off the bench. Kind of interesting. Their older sister played for South back in the day when Kayla Holes was down there, but their parents moved back here from Spain, and so this is their first year in the program, but they just fit right in. The freshman Angela Rojas Sapero is just one of those rare kids as a freshman who's defensive minded. She doesn't care if she gets a shot off or not because she's surrounded by plenty of offensive talent, and so she's just a kid that gets out there and just will beat your point guard to death. Whether that's she's doing a much better job now of when to stick her hand in there and try to get a steal, or when to just keep the ball handler in front of her and let her other teammates get the steal. And then her older sister comes off the bench, and she's capable of having a big offensive night for them as a junior. So, that's it. Really, the defense has been their calling card all year. They're holding people generally under 40 points almost every time out, and so they've just got, they've finally got this level of athleticism and length and the things that they need to be successful with some of the better teams in this part of the state. And their only 2 losses right now are on the road down at a pretty decent Evansville North team that came down to the wire, and then the Evansville Central, which has had an excellent season as well in 3A. That was a situation where, and this seems to be the only thing that slows them down, is that they can be so aggressive defensively that they can get themselves in some early foul trouble, and that's kind of what happened in the Central game where Julia Lashley and Angela got in some early foul trouble. But they've got depth. He's got 3 or 4 kids that he can bring off the bench, and the nice thing is they don't lose anything defensively. You might lose obviously some offensively, but they're able to come in and hold their own. And I've seen that on several occasions where they've had to come in against Columbus North, and really they took care of the entire second quarter with 2 of South's top starters on the bench, and still were able to pull away from them and win that game. So certainly in this neighborhood, they've proven that they're the top team in 4A, kind of in this area that we're in, at least to the regional level. I think Columbus North is capable of giving them a game. They showed at times that they could give South some issues, but at the sectional level right now they've easily handled Bloomington North, Martinsville, and both Terre Haute schools. So I think the computers are pretty spot on at a 91% rate there. That's 9 out of 10 times South's gonna win this sectional without any problem.
Jim, is there the sense in that locker room? You mentioned how they don't have a senior. They start multiple juniors. You're talking about, kids like Rojas Sapera and getting kids that kind of come in as underclassmen and contributing. Is there the sense in that locker room that they're a year early, or is this expected from the tip of the season?
Well, yeah, I think so in a way. I mean, like I said, it was one of those things where, they kind of, that freshman year, they had to play, and they did. Especially Julia and Violet Hall. Got a lot of minutes as freshmen and kind of proved their worth. And then last year it was just a matter of them maturing. And so you kind of got the feeling that if they were able to build on what they did last year, because they had a decent year last year, it's just that Bloomington North, and their draw. I think I was looking; they haven't won a sectional game in quite a while. But then you look at their draw; it's been Center Grove, it's been Mooresville, it's been Columbus East back. When they had their run, they've just had these really bad draws where they get the best team in the sectional. And so they just haven't had a chance to build any kind of postseason resume in since the last time that they won a sectional in, I think, 2019. But I'm not surprised at all what this team's doing, because you could see the talent there. It was just a matter of them getting experience, getting a little muscle on them, and then kind of getting up to the speed of the game. Because what you would see is when they would play the BNLs and the Columbus North teams like that could really get into them defensively and press them. They couldn't handle it. They would turn the ball over. They just weren't ready for it as freshmen and sophomores. This year, not only are they ready for it, that's what they're doing to other teams. And they did it to BNL this year. They did it to Bloomington North. Just absolutely destroyed Bloomington North this year. So that's what you're seeing from them, is they're the ones dictating things on offense and defense, and that's why they're 20-2.
Yeah, you mentioned one.
Oh, go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you mentioned, he has depth, he being Coach Larry Winters. In watching him on film, Jim, he doesn't run a lot of tricky stuff. It's like 5-out motion. He ran, overload T game concepts against the zone. He doesn't get up and yell crazily on the sideline. He just seems to just lean into the fact that he has 5 players that can dribble, pass, and shoot and do everything and defend and so on and so forth. But tell us about Coach Winters and kind of what his progression is to leading this team to potentially a 77% chance to win the regional.
Yeah. He's been there for probably certainly the longest tenured basketball coach outside of J.R. Holmes, in the area down here. He's been at it for 27 years now, has over 300 wins, and so he's got a system. And some of his assistant coaches have changed a little bit. Dustin Carver was a big one he had for a long time that moved up into administration. But yeah, he's just one of those things. He wants to, obviously, with him, defense has always been the number one thing. That's how you get on the floor when you play for him, and he's been consistent with that since I've, in the 20 years that I've covered him. It's just a matter of, do you have the kids that can put up some buckets, and this year he's got that. He's got some kids that can put up some buckets. But yeah, I think what he wants to do, and I've seen this with some other coaches, that your teaching time is in practice. When you turn around, you get into a game, he expects his kids to carry out and execute, and he's got smart kids this year who can do that, and so he doesn't have to say a lot to them. It's just some reminders here and there, like every team. Especially when they were younger, if they hit a couple of threes early, well, you could guarantee that the next 5 or 6 shots were going to be somebody taking a 3 from the arc. That's not like that anymore. This is a team that can, that I think is just older and more experienced. And, the big thing this year is that they've got some point guards, even though they're, they're young and whatnot. But, Julia Lashley's been able to play more of an off-guard position. She's just been so overwhelmed because every team knew they had to take her out of it last year, and she had to handle the ball. Because their starting point guard tore her ACL like the first 2 or 3 games of the season, so she was just under a lot of pressure last year. And so I think it's one of those things where Larry's just let this team grow and take their lumps, get their experience, and now, like you said, they've got all that knowledge, and he doesn't have to get on them nearly as much. He can kind of just sit back and say, here's our plan, go execute it, and now they can go do it.
Jim, let's shift down to 3A. Is Northview in your purview, or is it just Edgewood?
Yeah, Edgewood, Nolan Valley. Yeah, we don't really cover Northview, but as far as that's right now, Northview is a heavy favorite. I would consider them as much as Bloomington South probably is. Beginning of the year, I would have told you Edgewood would have been right there with them, and maybe even had a chance to take it, but. Maddie Bland, one of their big 3 are, the sisters, Maddie and Allie Bland and Macy Kreider. And again, it's a team that really doesn't depend on any seniors per se, except for a couple. But those 3 juniors have been starting. They've been out there since they were freshmen again. And when Maddie got hurt, she was a kid that she was good for 12 points a game. She was good for 6 to 8 rebounds a game. She was good for 3 to 4 steals a game. Kid that took the ball out. Kid that was our top defender. I mean, it just really took the wind out of their sails when she got hurt. And you've seen now, because that team didn't have a lot of depth, and the other 2 players were really role players that started. And so now so much more is you got a kid that was supposed to come off the bench and is now forced to start. And they're just kids that just on a given night, they can hurt you, but there's been so much pressure on those, on Macy Kreider, who's a very good, again, a 3-sport athlete, a kid that went to state and track, and a kid that's, one of our all area goalkeepers in soccer after she picked that sport up, as a 6-footer who can score from all over the floor. And then Allie's a quick point guard, but you can just kind of tell that it's so much easier to take those 2 out as opposed to taking the 3 out with most teams at that level. So they've just really, they started off 8-1, and I think right now they're 11-9. They lost again this evening, and it's just been very hard for them to get to the 40-point mark on most nights. And way they're set up, obviously drawing Northview in the first round. Yeah, that's the worst you could get. I'm looking for Owen Valley. I think they won't have any problems. I think they'll be able to win their opener. They got a freshman in Aubrey Sparks who put up 42 points the other night, which puts her, among the top 10, in that program's history. And I got a feature I'm working on her to preview the sectional. And she's a kid that most of her scoring comes, in the lane and drives and pull-ups and stuff like that. And she's a freshman, but she's able to pull it off. I mean, she's got the physicality as a guard to do it. And so that team's going to be really good for a long time when you add in what they're looking at bringing in next year from their 8th grade. But yeah, I look at them to be able to win their opener against Speedway. Obviously, I don't see them having any problems with George Washington in the semifinals. And then, they're still going to have some problems with Northview. Handle them pretty easily. They've got the athletes and the defense and the scoring that just really nobody in that sectional can match.
It'll be interesting. Northview will have to go through Cascade. Cascade's been shorthanded at times this season, but I think they're about full strength when they played Northview, and that game didn't go well. But Cascade, you never know, they could grind one out. Macy, Pugh, Izzy Gettig, are both back, so that's a big deal. Pugh, especially at the top of that lineup, makes things look a lot better alongside Chloe Smith, Kaylee Alston, all 3 averaging double digits, along with Lily Hall. Speedway, like Jim mentioned, is going to have a tough one there with Owen Valley in the opening round. Macy Delisle, Haley Clampett, Madeline Metallic, probably sound like a lot of familiar names if you guys read my stuff, because they're also, a lot of them are softball kids too, and volleyball, I think. But it's going to be an uphill climb for the Indy area schools too. Jim, before we let you get out of here, are there any other area sectionals of intrigue for you in your coverage area, or anything story-wise that you'd like to formally plug again?
Yeah, I guess, well, the only other 2 sectionals we really cover around here are going to be the 2A sectional down at North Knox, and then we've got Lighthouse, winless on the year. They come out and thought they were going to have a pretty good year or have a decent year anyway, coming off the kind of a historic volleyball season that a lot of those kids had, and 2 of their players go down with injuries, and so now they're sitting 0-18 with a junior who's having to literally put in score at 75% of their points. And they drew White River Valley, so they're likely a one and done there. I
you can have some of my sectionals if you'd like. I mean, 2 isn't very many. I have like 15.
Yeah,
so.
2A. Yeah, right now that's a North Knox, South Knox. It's set up for a North Knox, South Knox championship. Unless
sectionals aren't even interesting, Jim. You got 2 more there, and they're not even. Yeah, I mean South Knox. I mean, come on, you can have like 4 or 5 of mine.
Well, we'll see. It's going to be like Bedford. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of because Floyd Central obviously the favorite down there, but with Columbus East down and Bedford really down this year. But you look at it, Bedford has not lost a sectional game in 12 years, and nuts, so you wonder what kind of will that bring something out in them, because that occasionally that's one of those sectionals you'll see it with the boys. There'll be some upset out of nowhere. They gets pulled in that thing because those are all just such traditional basketball, with Jeff in New Albany. I mean, they take their basketball very seriously. So yeah, that one's a lot of times doesn't necessarily play out by the number. Like last year, Bedford was not supposed to win that last year, and look what happened. But I think Floyd Central's in a much stronger position to get through at this time around.
Absolutely. Jim, where can folks find you on Twitter and then read your stuff?
At Jim Gordillo, and then HeraldTimesOnline.com. So yeah, we just got wrestling sectional this Saturday is the biggie, and then next week I'm working on a story about our the good half dozen area the freshmen that we've got in the area that are making a big impact this year to set up next week's sectionals.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Jim. It was good talking to you, buddy, and we'll talk again soon.
All righty. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, so we're going to go from the south, and now we're going to get whiplash because we're going to go up to the north, and we're going to bring Austin Hough on about 20 minutes later than what we promised. Austin has been subjected to all of this conversation. He actually wanted to listen to it, Danny. It's exciting for us.
I like to be educated, man. I gotta sound smart. If one of our teams gets down to semi-state, I don't want to sound like a complete idiot thinking they're just going to win everything. That northern Indiana bias, as we all know, exists.
Don't get it started. Again, the email's Danny Riego at AOL.com. Danny Riego, 1 R, 2 N's at AOL.com. I love the stash, by the way, brother.
Thank you. We're trying, they say you can't experiment in your 30s, but we turned 30 last month and we're still experimenting. So
good for you.
We're trying.
I love that. Let's bury the lead. What other sectionals are you focused on and excited about?
So should we just rip the Band-Aid off on Washington-Penn Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern in the Central Time Zone, so 7 p.m. Central, the second game of the night. Yeah, that was blind draw gods, man. I don't know why what sense they have. It's very cruel of them to do that, but it feels like the winner of that game, is going to win the sectional championship. So
Penn versus South.
Yeah, it's a great game. It's going to be 21-1 Washington, right? This is they've been hotly debated all year, for good or bad, indifferent, and this is a senior class, an historic senior class for them. That's even saying something for their standards, right? 3 Division I players, never had that before. Kira Reynolds, a legitimate, Miss Basketball candidate. Quintuple double in a game this year, right? Like just some crazy stuff. And Washington and Penn, it was a great game the first time they played. I covered it. Penn was actually missing 2 of their players, 2 of their starters that are 6 foot girls. One's a freshman, one's a sophomore, and they had a 3 with about a minute left to take the lead potentially. So, Penn will come into this game. They won tonight against Thursday night against NorthWood, so they're 19-5. You got 21-1 versus 19-5 in the first round of the sectional. The other 5 teams in this sectional combined, I think, have 25 wins or 20 wins if that, and South Bend Riley has 13 of them. And Riley, kudos to them. They're 13-9, but their schedule has not been a murderer's row, to say the least. Kudos to them for getting the 13 wins, but whoever wins Penn Washington will win, will win the sectional probably.
You heard it here first. Austin Hough with the prediction of the night.
Hot takes. Hot takes is what you get up here in South Bend, all right?
Gotta stay warm somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's 40 degrees. Fine. So yeah.
Who are the 2 kids who are out, the 6-footers for Penn?
It was Anna McCullough, who I wrote a story about actually, because she had some crazy weird sickness that she had to deal with for a month after volleyball semi-state. And so that was kind of a fun story to put together. I mean, it wasn't fun that she went through that in her life. But no, it was weird. It was crazy. But she basically got she had pneumonia, but then she had a weird reaction to the pneumonia. So she was at Riley's Children's Hospital for 10 days back in late November. So she had to get her whole cardio back up. She ended up coming back in mid-December, the game after Washington, she came back and played. So she's fine now, but she missed the first month of basketball. She actually thought she might have been sick during the volleyball semi-state. She slept on the entire bus ride back. It was kind of crazy. She's okay, which is good. you hear Riley's and you get nervous, but like she ended up being fine. She just needed expert doctors to keep her, like healthy and get her back to 100%. So, and then the other girl that missed, I believe, was the freshman Hummel. Hummel, her first name
Addison.
is escaping me. Addison Hummel, yeah, she missed that game as well. So she's the starting, center for them. So those were the two players that missed the game against Washington the first time around.
Hummel, by the way, 11 points, 8 rebounds a game. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant miss, especially against a kid like Kira Reynolds.
Right.
The first time around, obviously, South Bend got Penn. What do you think the keys for Penn to pull off the win against Washington is?
I think the key is you got to be able to break their pressure, Washington's pressure. I mean, that's what they make their living. I think that's counted. Like, there's 6 girls on Washington that average at least 1 steal per game, which is kind of crazy. Raya Wilson leads that charge with 6 steals a game. She's one of the best stealers of all time in state history. So you got to kind of watch. If they can keep onto the ball, if they can hold on to the ball, slow down the pace, try to work their offense, they have a chance. Like that's what got Washington a little bit in stretches of that game. Was Washington, when they pushed the tempo a little bit, they were able to get out, make layups, have free flowing game, right? Where when Penn was able to slow it down a little bit more, they could sustain a little bit more of that, like keep the game close, things like that, kind of frustrate Washington a little bit. So holding on to the ball is paramount for Penn because Washington makes their living off of steals and layups. So that's kind of probably going to be the biggest key for them.
Penn shooting 47% from the field. They're shooting 37% from 3. Jessa Troy seems to be getting a lot of the volume, and her scoring obviously is an important part to Penn's success. So how does she play into this Penn-Washington matchup?
Yeah, I mean, she brings a lot of energy too. I don't know if you've ever watched her play, Danny or Brian or any
I've seen
of you guys.
I've seen a lot of Jessa.
Yeah, I was figured you've seen how you have. I just figured I'd just run it out there just in case you hadn't. But she brings the energy, man. She is a spark plug for them. Obviously, the numbers are there too. Statistically speaking, she's very strong. But when she gets going, it feels like the whole team kind of feeds off her. She kind of did help spark some of that rally in the first game because Washington kind of led by 10 to 15 points for a while, and then Troy hit a 3. The crowd gets into it. She actually had a 4-point play at one point in that game too, which kind of really got the crowd going. So her energy, as much as her skill, is really important. And if she can get going, and a senior, who's kind of been through the wars, for lack of a better term, could help some of these younger girls. Penn is in a quote unquote drought right now. They haven't won a sectional in 2 years or 3 years. So it's they're not used to these kind of droughts under Christy Ulrich. So, Troy is one of those that has won a sectional. So I think that can help them a lot, especially against a Washington team that has a lot of experience making these, type of runs.
You got to pick it now, unless you're doing a prediction story that you don't want to spoil on this widely listened to podcast. I understand.
I don't like to make predictions, man.
I don't either, but I have to.
I don't have to, so it's nice. Except for Notre Dame football, it's the only thing I make predictions on. My gut says Washington, just because I think they know this is kind of it. Penn's a very young team. Troy's a senior, but a lot of their girls are coming back next year. They will be the NIC favorite next year, no doubt. And they will be the sectional favorite probably next year, barring something unforeseen. So this is a much more must-win thing for Washington because this is it. This is in theory it for this group, at least this era of Washington girls basketball. So to me, I think they will have that extra edge to go out and get it. Not that Penn won't have that, go get it.
It means more. It's about seniors,
right?
Yeah.
It's about you're kind of chasing legacy, and you're chasing the last chance at a state title, and even the individual accolades of trying to win Miss Basketball, right? For Kira Reynolds, or 3 of them could make the All-Star team. I don't know, but one school's ever gotten 3 Indiana All-Stars before in the same season. But they could get that, if they make a lengthy postseason run here, get to the Final Four, get to the state title game, right? So yeah, they're kind of chasing a lot of this history, both as a team and individually. So I think they will have more incentive to kind of go for it, I guess, is in my opinion.
Shifting on Northridge, Warsaw, we're probably going to have you on again after that Penn Washington game, so we'll have a chance to dive into that. I'm sure Danny will be chopping at the bit to talk about that one. Big Warsaw guy, that Danny Riego. I think they're great.
Northern Indiana bias. Uh-huh.
Contrary to popular Riego beliefs, I think Warsaw's great. And I'm genuinely excited on that one. So let's pause it there. I'm doing a terrible job hosting. I'm sorry, Kyle. One quick thought on a potential Northridge-Warsaw rematch, a little teaser, if you will.
Yeah, right. So obviously they met in the regular season for the NLC championship essentially, and Warsaw won by 16. They shoot the three very well. Bricker and Zartman and all of them just feel like they can just shoot threes. Lenny Krebs, great coach, has them rolling. I think their only loss off the top of my head is Homestead, correct? So I mean that's pretty good. Pretty good on a road game, and it was like negative 15 degrees, and they still played it. So like, if you're gonna stack up the like quality loss resume, like that's a pretty quality loss. So yeah, I mean they're really good. Northridge is just like they're always so fundamentally sound. Like Doug Springer is one of the best coaches in that regard. They're gonna play great defense usually. Like the issue for them is like they're not like super tall, other than Lily Scholl. Like they've never been tall, which is Doug Springer said to me last year, like, unfortunately, 6-footers don't grow on trees in Middlebury, where Northridge is at. So, like, they just have never been tall. Lily Scholl's the closest thing they've had to it. So, you got to battle some size there. But, they're scrappy. Like, Northridge, I've seen them up and close and personal for 7 years, and they're a very scrappy team. Like, I'm not going to rule them out. I know the first game was 16 points, but Northridge has a legitimate chance. It's just hard to win at Warsaw. It's a Northern Indiana thing. You guys wouldn't get it, obviously. So
correct.
The TigerDen 10-point. You already down 10 points in the TigerDen, as a lot of people say up here. So that's going to be tricky too. So we'll see though.
Danny, have you been to the TigerDen yet?
So interestingly, Warsaw's gym, I was told when I went up there that when they constructed or renovated the mill, used the TigerDen as kind of their blueprint. So when you walk into the mill, when you walk into the TigerDen, it's kind of like a bigger version of the mill. It's actually really cool. It's got the same rails, the same stairs that are in the corners. It is a very, very cool gym. I can only imagine what that was like back in the Kevin Holt days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a cool gym. Admittedly, I do like going in there. I've covered some games in there before. Obviously, so that the Washington-Penn winner and the Northridge-Warsaw winner get to play each other in the regional, and that will be a cinema game, right, for the viewers up here. So
we're doing a whole episode. It's Warsaw versus Washington is a whole episode because it's just it's a track. It's going to be a track meet. It's going to be fantastic.
It will be. First one to 95 might win that game, but it would. Regardless, like whatever combination of matchups comes out of those four, like it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic, and people are going to. It's a great like local matchup, and it's good to that one will be guaranteed to go at least to semi-state, right? Because last year Lake Central beat Washington, Valparaiso beat Northridge. It was like, well, Michiana is not really in the 4A at least anymore, so it'll be cool to at least have one 4A team in semi-state from the greater Michiana area.
That'll be fun for you because they'll get sent down to like Southport or something because that's how the travel things work.
Yeah, Frankfurt. Yeah, that's where we'll be.
Home of the hot dogs.
I love it.
Quick thought: Columbia City is playing Northwood, another team in your area. Columbia City, a pretty heavy favorite in the 3A North in general, let alone in that sectional. How do you handicap Northwood's chances there?
They got a puncher's chance because they've got Claire Payne, but and she's been great this year. I mean, maybe in any other year she could be flirting with Indiana All-Star nominees, but there's just so many great seniors this year. I know you guys have talked about that all year. But yeah, I mean, Addison Baxter at Columbia City, right? She's incredible going to Butler, right? One of the best players in the state. Pretty safe pick probably for Indiana All-Star status. So this was a draw that when it came out, I was like, man, there's 5 teams above 500 in this draw of the 6. So it's a good sectional overall, but it feels like Columbia City and Northwood are the 2 best teams. So it was kind of a bummer that, again, second game of the night in the sectional, Tuesday night. It's kind of a bummer that it's, not the championship game, but Northwood has a puncher's chance. They they went to semi-state last year in 3A, right? They have that experience. Columbia City, of course, has been great, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because they're will hit or miss on there, but they were in 4A, right? Or they played Homestead and had like some really tough
4A lost
sectional
to
draw,
Homestead.
like just brutal like sectional draws, right? So they're down in 3A. The new realignment, numbers help them here a little bit and clears the path a little bit to maybe make a run as opposed to running into a Homestead or a Snyder or whoever. So yeah, it'll be interesting game. I 20% chance probably for Northwood. I mean, they could win. It wouldn't surprise me, but it just feels like Columbia City is the best team in that sectional. Whoever wins that game is sitting pretty to win the thing overall, that sectional overall.
Bremen, heavy favorite, jumping down to 2A before we get down to A. Bremen, heavy favorite at 20-2 to win the Knox sectional, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they could get a tricky-ish matchup in the semifinal with LaVille. It would be the third time they've played LaVille this year. Conference game in November, they won by 26. Bi-county tournament up here, they won by 5 last week. So, like, LaVille played them harder. Bi-county's always, like, a big thing around here. There's a lot of small schools getting together to play. So, but I love this Bremen team, man. They obviously went to the Final Four in 3A last year, kind of a surprise run. Combination of, getting hot at the right time. Maybe the draw worked out a little bit for their favor, right? They didn't have to play Norwell until the semi-state championship game. And then, we all saw what happened there. We don't have to revisit that. So, but they have the same team basically as last year. Kyla Foster just became the all-time league scorer at the program's history. Lania Grubbs is a good player for them. Emma Kincaid. They've got, really 5, 6, 7 girls that are all really solid. They play good defense. They can shoot the three. Like, they're kind of a sneaky 2A team to make a run. I mean, the thing is, obviously in the South Knox is there, but up north, like, yeah, Bluffton is really good. That's who they would probably play in the regional game, right? Bremen's good. There's a lot of solid teams in 2A, but given what they did last year, I can't rule out like them making a real run because they're very good this year. Bremen is a very good team, better than they were last year. So to me, they're a dark horse, maybe one of those 4 or 5 teams that could maybe really make a serious push in 2A to get to Gainbridge Fieldhouse and take your chances against South Knox.
One last team I wanted to ask you about, Marquette Catholic looks to have the pieces for another run. Lafayette Central Catholic's probably going to stand in their way at some point, likely at semi-state. But Marquette Catholic, they opened this season with some competitive games against 4A teams, including McCutcheon, Lake Central. Here they are again, Katie Clignan looking to lead them on a deep postseason run, the defending Class A runner-ups.
Yeah. You say they have the pieces. Well, it's because it's all the pieces from last year that went to literally 99.3% of the offense came back, which was like, that was the funniest thing to read in an email preseason. It's like, yeah, we got 99.3%. Oh, okay. Lanaya Davis, Indiana Junior All-Star probably this year. She's been incredible at the 1A level, right? 20 points a game, 9 rebounds. She does everything for them. I will say they are great. They are the favorite. Don't sleep maybe on Westville in that sectional, which is crazy because Westville is like, what the heck is Westville? But they are 21-2. They should be 21-2. They play LaPorte Friday night. LaPorte is 0-21 going into the game. So, give or take, we'll see. We'll take our chances that Westville will win that game. But Mike Megacy, who has over 400 wins now in his career, they've built a really good team really quickly. Hillary Labus as a freshman has been really nice for them. Westville lost to Marquette by 22 earlier this year. Now, granted, it was so that would steal a lot of the thunder of my argument here, but but like it was a they had just played the night before against the second best team in their conference, so like they were coming off a big emotional win. The next night they're gonna play Marquette Catholic, and like Catholic had a little bit of a break, so Marquette's still the favorite. I'm not going to pick against them, but Westville can definitely give them a game, and it's kind of crazy. They've never won a sectional championship. I got a story dropping on Megacy this week or by Monday. I don't know when actually it's publishing, but I just filed it. So by Monday, we'll read the story about Mike Megacy at SouthBendTribune.com. Coach St. Joe to the state title 20 years ago. Had some great teams in his heyday in the 2000s back there. So they're going to be well coached. They're going to be ready to go. It should be a great game, like on that Friday night in the semifinal. Westville got the bye. Marquette will probably take care of Bowman Academy in the first round. And so Marquette Westville Friday night semifinal game at Thea Bowman Leadership Academy, all the way out in the region. So should be a great game. But yeah, Marquette's legit. So is Westville. Top 5 game in 1A in the semifinal of the sectional. So
Good stuff. Well, Austin, thanks for hopping on with us, buddy. Sorry for getting you out late, but we'll talk to you again here in just a few days with the game that you really wanted, South Bend, Washington versus Penn on a Tuesday night under the lights.
Wednesday night.
Oh, Wednesday night.
Wednesday,
good.
Wednesday night.
Pardon the hell out of me.
Yeah. Tuesday is the battle between Riley and Mishawaka, and then you've got Michigan City Adams in the first game Wednesday, and then Washington-Penn.
Oh, good. So I get to
Second
watch
game,
3
8 p.m.
games, one of them.
8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. in LaPorte.
3 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah.
That's good.
Noon for our friends in Hawaii who are tuning in.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Austin. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Thank you,
Austin.
And now we get to bring on the son of a Hall of Famer. We're just going to jump right to it. Son of the Hall of Famer, the son of Justin Sokeland. His name is Kyle Sokeland. We couldn't get Justin, so we got the next best thing.
Yeah.
What's up, Kyle?
That's all I've been hearing my entire life, Hank. So thank you.
You're welcome. Just wanted to make you feel welcome. Let's start with what you saw last night. Evansville Central, or a couple nights ago, I suppose. Evansville Central against Gibson Southern. A really impressive performance.
I think you mean Washington against Gibson Southern.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Man, I'm F. Washington versus Gibson Southern. They held Gabby Spink and Paige Knox to 1 point in the first half?
Yeah, combined 1 point in the first half. It was, I think Gretchen Miles told me that was probably their best defensive effort of the entire season. I'd say so when you have 2 Division I players, almost a non-factor for much of the game. Yeah, that win, I can't remember what the final score was, but it pretty much wrapped up the PAC championship for Washington because they were both undefeated coming in. Just 1 through 5 in the lineup, Washington showed they can defend like crazy. And they're just savvy enough to score enough points because I think it was in the 40s. So it wasn't exactly highlight-worthy game, but Gretchen knows how to win.
Let's kind of start at 16, sectional 16 at Reitz. So just assess this. I mean, Castle North and Gibson Southern are all on the bottom half. So Evansville Reitz only has to play one of them, which I guess would lead me to believe, Soak, that they are the statistical favorite. I mean, I ask that as a question because who do the people down there like in that sectional, and what are the keys to who's going to come out of that thing? Because I think you could go to any 4 of those teams, right?
In my opinion, yes. Reitz 100% has the best draw because they play Harrison on Friday night, and they don't have to face either of those other 3 until Saturday. So in theory, yes, no offense to Harrison, but they pretty much just have to beat one tough opponent to win that championship. But they're just so hit and miss. My opinion, they've had some really bad losses at home because Central thumped them. They lost by Castle. North Posey came in and beat them. So it just depends on what Wright's team shows up. In my opinion, I'd have to pick Gibson Southern or Castle if they can string 2 or 3 good nights together. Because, for example, Castle can shoot it really well. Against Central last night, they didn't, and it showed that how much they can struggle putting up points if those threes don't go in. Gibson Southern, 2 very great players in Spink and Schnaus. Just depends on what you get from the other 3 or 4 in the rotation. So, yeah, it's a true toss-up, and I haven't really decided who I would tab as the favorite there. I might lean Gibson Southern, but other coaches who I've polled just kind of them or Castle.
So sticking with Reitz. So Reitz graduates Nora Miller last year. That's a high percentage of their scoring, but they've got increased production this year from Bailey Hape. They returned Khalees Mitchell, who's a 6'5" center. That's certainly unique. Brylan Staley is having a career year in her final campaign as a high school athlete there. Talk about some of the individual pieces and how that's gone in transitioning. Because I think I had read, it might have even been in one of your stories, so that, see, Hank, I do read a little bit, They actually last year was their first winning season in 20 years, and now they're building on their second in a row. Like, so what's going on down there?
Yeah. Well, going even further back, I think Reitz girls won the state championship in 1981, I believe. Very early years of the tournament for the girls. And then starting in the mid 90s, it bottomed out bad. No winning seasons from like 93 or 4 to either last year or the year before. Just coaches would stay 2 or 3 years and then leave. I think Gary Lovelace got the ball rolling with some feeder programs and about 500 or so, and then won a couple sectional games. But last year when Brock Stone came from Kentucky, they just took another step forward. And I think they just beat Memorial tonight. So I think they've got 16 wins or so. Just to prove your point, yes. Some of the players have taken step role. Bailey Haight has to hold. She's pretty much the distributor and the scorer for that team now, with Nora Miller out and just a couple an injury to another guard. Their point guard a couple years ago just did not decide to come back to play basketball. Otherwise she'd be a senior. So Bailey has to do a lot for that backcourt and that lineup. Brandon Staley can hit threes. Felice Mitchell has gotten a little bit better every year. And she's 6'5". You throw it up to the rim, she's going to get it and just toss it back in. I think her younger sister, Kalia Mitchell, is also a freshman who's been a starter from day one. So just a lot of pieces. And I think they've been pointing to this year specifically because they get the sectional at home. And I know that's going to be a big deal for the west side of Evansville if they can pull the one out, because it's been, I think since the 90s since they won a sectional.
I'll pivot over to Gibson Southern. You mentioned the other pieces stepping around, Ravulette Maurer, some of those kids with Spink and Schnaus. I mean, how have you seen some of those other kids develop, Kyle, or has it still been kind of just we'll take what we can get from them, and Paige and Gabby are going to have to carry us?
It probably just depends on the night, because when I've seen them 5 or 6 times probably. Lydia Maurer's a decent spot shooter, especially she runs to the corner and she gets open. She'll hit 2 or 3 a game. Against Washington, Molly Spindler came off the bench with 9 points, and she hit a big 3 to tie it with a couple minutes left. So it just stuff like that. I think Nola Ravulette, her numbers might be down, but she missed a handful of games. I hope I'm not out of pocket here to say, but it was a concussion. So she just took them time to get adjusted. But yeah, just stuff like it just seems to be someone different every night for them. And maybe it's Lauren Adamson, who's a 3-year starter at that other forward spot. Just depends on who they have that night and who the defense is going to let shoot.
Do you think they have the horses for a deep run? Like beyond regional?
It's helpful that 4A South isn't quite, at least that regional draw area isn't quite what it usually is. Because I think they would get who I would assume would be Floyd Central in the regional, I think. So again, one coach told me, when you have 2 Division I players, you have a shot at any game. Like, they are very, very good. I think they're missing Chloe Graham a lot more than people assumed from last year, and even Allie Malone on defense. Just those 2 players were 3 or 4-year starters, and it's really hard to replicate what they could do. And you saw it in the state championship, because I think Chloe hit 6 or 7 threes, and Allie came up with the big steal late. So I could see them making a regional, maybe semi-state, just depending on how they match up with Floyd, but it'll just be tough to see.
I want to take it to sectional 31. Back right before Christmas on December 17th, Washington lost to Jasper by 2, and that's a potential matchup that we might see there in that championship game. What do you take? How's Jasper playing now? Do you think that the upset's there? Who do you got in that game? Washington, Jasper, if we were to see that matchup in the championship.
Yeah, that's the one I've been pointing to in 31, because Washington beat them Jasper by 2. But that was the closest anyone in that sectional has come to them. I think every other game was by double digits. Jasper they're athletic. They've got 3 or 4 just multi-sport athletes, softball, volleyball, that Brittany Maynard can just plug in, and it feels like they all look the same and play the same. And frankly, she wins every spot she's been at. She was at Evansville Central years ago. She had a 12 to 15 win teams with Princeton. And now in year 3, she's already got them, I think, at 17 wins, 16, 17 wins. So I would imagine that's a championship game on Saturday night. But Washington kind of struggled with South Spencer tonight. And so you never know how teenagers are going to play on any given night. But I would imagine Washington with their size, or just a couple of shooters with Shea Hawk, Aubrey Frank, London Gilly played well against Gibson Southern. I think she had 10 rebounds off the bench or so. So that I would imagine that's a championship. It should be another single-digit game, just based on how well Jasper plays as a team.
Anybody going to touch Evansville Central in the sectional below them?
So some people are probably listening, watching. I'll say yes, but it would
Sorry, I didn't mean
be
to put you in a spot.
No, it's not because the other teams are struggling. It's just Central's that much better. They've got the best player in Evansville, in Maddie Shirley. They've got good players around her too, and Avery Kelly, Maya Skelton, Olivia Heil can put up double digits, and they just play really good defense. I think Avery Kelly is the best on-ball defender in Evansville. Just goes after it, and just like watching her play because she's so aggressive and strong. It would take a really, really good effort by someone, probably Heritage Hills or Memorial, on a very good night. And then Central, their one bugaboo is turnovers. That's why they lost to Avon there in the last minute. They lost in North Posey, South Knox. They were up 9, and South Knox turned up the full court pressure and got a bunch of turnovers in a row. So you'd have to really force them to make the mistakes and just hope that Shirley doesn't go for 35 like she did last night.
You mentioned South Knox. You had a chance to see them in person the other day. Just your impressions of seeing them up close and personal.
Yeah, by their own admission, the first half wasn't great against Central. I thought they'd shoot it better just because there are a lot of guards and like to space it out on space, like just space the floor with seems like 4 out or 1 in. But in the second half, they very aggressive on defense. Ella Bowe kind of took over, put the team on her back, and got them back in that game. But they've got Bryn Hill, Kendall Hill, who can score in double digits. So just a very solid team overall. I'm not surprised that they're the favorites in 2A, just because I'm not sure how many teams that down there have just, I don't know, overall talent like them, especially with Ella Bowe and Bryn Hill as seniors, because I think they just beat Lagodi pretty bad tonight, and Bryn Hill had 30 and Ella had 24 or so.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
and you had Kendall Hill, the sophomore, who's just an incredibly talented player too. I mean, it just everything. Like watching them play with Homestead and hanging around with HSE, like that isn't a 2A team. It's like a high level 3A team that they got down there. But Lanesville, we'll talk about this with you down the road, but Lanesville will be a very interesting regional if that one comes to fruition. Just how Lanesville defends and some of their pieces over there in their experience too. I think there's a lot of value in winning, as Danny mentioned last week. Any other schools, Kyle, that you want to talk about, sectionals you want to shout out, put on blast, etc., before we as a group call it a night?
I don't know, because those are, like you said, those are the main schools. 1A, we could see like a Wood Memorial or Northeast Du Bois win. I think they're going to run into Borden in the regional, which would be a tall task. 2A, North Posey's the favorite at Forest Park. I think it's been a while since they've won, so it's a feel-good story. Again, I don't know who they draw in that regional because the focus has always been South Knox and Lanesville and the other one, but they got whoever the other sectional is. Yeah, it just depends on who gets out of there. But really, I would expect us to have South Knox and one of those 3A teams potentially make a run. But again, 3A is really tough in the South because it would be Washington, Greensburg, and Central against Silver Creek or Oregon.
Man, that's going to be incredible. Danny, Courtney, before we wrap this up as a show, anything else that you guys wanted to touch on?
No, I'm good. So
I'm good.
Educational.
I think we got it. It's not.
Someone has to be with Hank on the show. So
That's more true than you realize. You see how I go with people with me to talk to. Imagine me by myself. It'd be a disaster. I'd be canceled immediately. But we thank you all so much for listening. Again, we'll be back with live shows. Soak will be back on with us, I'm sure. Austin Huff. We'll have a full rotation of guests, similar to what we did last year, beginning Tuesday night with coverage from Franklin Central. Center Grove is probably where I'm going to be. We'll have reporters fanned out everywhere. We'll bring them on to talk about it. We'll have shows every day live next week after games, so be sure to follow on Twitter, subscribe, like us on YouTube, tickle the bell for notifications to know when we go live. And, yeah, looking forward to get this thing going. Read everything on IndyStar.com, and we'll tweet out and link to everything that Kyle, Jim, and Austin write as well. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll talk to you again next week.